My name is Sue Johns, and I was 36 years old when I realized that keeping the peace sometimes costs more than starting a war. The night it happened, I almost canceled dinner. I stood in my kitchen staring at the stove, gripping a wooden spoon like it was the only thing keeping me upright. The house was loud in that forced, crowded way it gets when too many people are pretending nothing is wrong. Cabinets opening too hard, footsteps that lingered, laughter that felt rehearsed. My mom had insisted. "Just one dinner," she said over the phone. "Let's sit down together like a family." I agreed because I always did. Because I still believed that if I tried hard enough, if I stayed calm enough, things wouldn't explode. I cooked enough food for 6 people, even though only 3 of them actually contributed to this house. Roasted chicken, mashed potatoes, vegetables. I knew half of them wouldn't touch. The kind of meal you make when you're trying to prove something. To yourself more than anyone else. My daughter Isla, 10 years old and already too aware of emotional undercurrents, helped me carry plates to the table. She moved quietly, careful, like she could feel the tension in the air without knowing why. My son Jesse was already seated, hunched over his phone, shoulders pulled inward as if he were trying to disappear into himself. He's 12, quiet, sensitive. He struggles in school, reading especially. Teachers call it behind. I call it trying. He's gentle, observant, and painfully aware when people think less of him. He's my son. That should have been enough to protect him. Dinner had barely started when my older sister Avery leaned back in her chair, fork dangling loosely between her fingers, and looked straight at Jessie. "Some kids," she said casually, like she was commenting on the weather, "are just born behind." Then she laughed. Not loudly, not cruelly enough for someone to immediately intervene, just enough to make it unmistakable. Everything inside me went cold. Jesse didn't say a word. He didn't argue. He didn't even look up. He quietly placed his fork back on his plate. The soft clink of metal against ceramic felt deafening. My dad cleared his throat. My mom shot me that look, the one she's been using my entire life. The "please don't do this" look. I looked at Avery and smiled, even though my hands were shaking. "Behind?" I said evenly. "Like how you and your kids are still living in my house and eating my groceries?" The room froze. Avery's eyes widened as if I'd slapped her without touching her. My mom leaned toward me and whispered, "Sue, please don't." But it was already happening. Let me back up. 3 months earlier, Avery's husband had kicked her out. From what he told me, over the phone, voice cracking, he was done with her spending, her entitlement, the way she treated everyone like they existed to support her life. She called me that same night, crying, said it would only be for a few weeks. I let her move in. I gave her the guest room, cleared out closet space, set up a study corner for her kids in the dining room. I rearranged my life because that's what family does, or at least what I'd always been told. She never once offered to pay for groceries, or utilities, or even toilet paper, which her kids seemed to burn through like it was free. Meanwhile, she was out shopping. New shoes, hair appointments, expensive bags she didn't need. When I asked how she was affording it, she shrugged. "Mom and Dad helped me out." And I swallowed it, again and again. "It's temporary," I told myself. "She's going through a hard time." Until she laughed at my son. Avery rolled her eyes now. "Wow, I was just joking." "If you're that funny," I said, meeting her gaze, "maybe you should go perform somewhere else instead of living in my guest room." Silence slammed down on the table. Her kids stopped eating. Isla stared at her plate, jaw tight. Jesse slowly pushed his chair back, already retreating. My mom stood up abruptly. "We didn't need to do this." My dad muttered something about bad timing. Then Avery smiled. That sharp, defensive smile I'd seen my entire life. "Well," she said, "if it's such a burden, maybe you shouldn't have offered in the first place." Something inside me snapped. I walked into the kitchen and turned off the stove. "Fine," I said, "then consider this dinner my last offering." Everyone started talking at once. My mom said I was being dramatic. My dad said I was making things worse. Avery stood up, yelling that she had nowhere to go. Her kids started crying. Jessie quietly stood and left the table without a word. I told Avery she had until the end of the month. I'd help with the first month's rent, because apparently I still needed to prove I wasn't the villain. But after that, she was out. The argument got loud enough that my neighbor texted to ask if everything was okay. That night, after everyone finally went to bed, I sat on the laundry room floor and cried until 2 in the morning. My chest hurt, my hands wouldn't stop shaking. I told myself it was over. I had no idea it was just beginning. The morning after the blow-up, Avery acted like nothing had happened. I came into the kitchen at 6:30 a.m. hair still damp from the shower, brain foggy from maybe 2 hours of broken sleep. The lights were already on. The coffee maker was humming. Avery was sitting at my table, scrolling on her phone, drinking from my mug, the one Isla had painted for me in kindergarten, crooked hearts and all. She didn't look up when I walked in. No apology, no acknowledgement, not even a passive-aggressive comment. Just silence, thick and deliberate, like she was daring me to bring it up again. My husband Mark moved around behind me, packing lunches, tying shoelaces, staying just a little too quiet. He didn't look at me either. I told myself he was uncomfortable, that he didn't want to get in the middle. I wanted to believe that. Avery's kids shuffled in, unusually subdued. They made toast, barely touched it, avoided eye contact. Isla caught my eye across the counter. We didn't need to say anything. We both felt it. The shift, like the house itself had tilted overnight. When everyone finally left, Mark texted me from the driveway, even though we were standing 10 feet apart minutes earlier. "You okay? You sure about this?" I stared at my phone, jaw tight. "Yes," I typed. I had to be. Avery had until the end of the month. I wasn't backing down. But the day felt wrong. The quiet wasn't peaceful. It was watchful. Doors started slamming harder than necessary. Dishes piled up in the sink, unwashed, like a message. Avery left wet towels on the bathroom floor on purpose. She forgot to pick her kids up from school once, even though it was her turn. When I reminded her, she smirked. "Oh, sorry. I didn't realize I was your unpaid nanny now." That week, my mom called me 3 times. Each call followed the same script. She didn't mean it. She's under a lot of stress. You know how sensitive Jessie is. Maybe you're projecting a little? Projecting. My sister was living in my house rent-free, eating my food, shopping on my parents' money, mocking my child at my table, and I was the one being accused of projecting. I almost laughed. Instead, I went quiet. That scared my mom more than yelling ever did. Then Friday came. I got off work early, a rare thing. I'd swapped shifts with a coworker at the last minute. I didn't tell anyone. I wanted to surprise Isla, maybe take her for ice cream before dinner. She'd been so good through all of this, so careful not to upset anyone. I came in through the garage quietly, shoes in my hand. That's when I heard laughter. Upstairs, a woman's voice, Avery's, and a man's laugh that didn't sound casual. It sounded relaxed, familiar. My stomach dropped. I froze at the bottom of the stairs, heart hammering so hard I thought it might give me away. I told myself I was imagining it, that I was paranoid, that stress was making me hear things. But my feet moved anyway. Each step felt too loud. The hallway stretched longer than it ever had before. The guest room door was cracked open. I didn't need to see everything. I saw enough. Too close, hands where they shouldn't be. No urgency to stop. Mark wasn't pulling away. My vision blurred instantly. I stepped back before they noticed me. I don't remember walking down the stairs, only gripping the railing, because my legs were shaking so badly I thought I'd fall. I stood in the kitchen, staring at the counter. 5 minutes passed, maybe 10. Time stopped making sense. Then Avery came down alone, adjusting her sweater like she'd just finished a normal conversation. She didn't see me until she was halfway across the room. Our eyes met. "How long?" I asked. She paused. Considered lying. Considered pretending she didn't understand. Then she smiled. Not big, not apologetic, just enough. That's when something feral took over. I lunged at her, grabbed her hair, and dragged her toward the front door. She screamed, called me crazy, said I'd lost my mind. I didn't care. I opened the door and shoved her onto the porch. Then I turned around, walked back into the kitchen, and punched my husband. Hard. I felt something give under my knuckle. He didn't even raise his hands to defend himself. He just stood there bleeding, stunned, like he couldn't believe consequences had finally caught up to him. I pointed to the door. "Midnight," I said. "All of you." They were gone by then. Her kids, him, everything. That night I didn't sleep. I sat in the dark living room, staring at the microwave clock as it ticked minute by minute into morning. My hands ached. My chest felt hollow. But I didn't regret it. I just felt empty. And somewhere deep down I knew she wasn't finished with me yet. The house felt wrong after they left. Not quiet, wrong. I used to fantasize about silence. With 6 people under one roof, silence felt like a luxury I never got. But that night, sitting alone on the couch with all the lights off, it felt like something had been scooped out of the walls and taken with them. I didn't sleep. I just watched the microwave clock crawl forward, minute by minute, until the sky outside the windows shifted from black to gray. Around 7, Isla padded into the living room. She didn't ask where her dad was. She didn't ask why the house felt hollow. She climbed onto the couch beside me, curled into my side, and rested her head on my shoulder, like she'd done when she was little and scared of thunderstorms. That's what broke me. I almost told her everything. I almost said, "Your father isn't coming back." I almost explained why. But the words felt too sharp, too heavy. She was only 10. How do you explain to a child that the aunt who braided her hair and painted her nails had been sneaking around with her father while you worked late shifts to keep the lights on? So I didn't. I told her we were going to be okay, that it would be just us for a while. She nodded. I think she already knew. Jesse came home from school that afternoon and asked if Dad was on a trip. I said yes, a short one. He didn't question it, but I noticed how his eyes kept drifting toward the guest room door, like the quiet itself was unsettling him. Avery's kids hadn't come to say goodbye. No hugs, no explanations. And even though Jesse didn't say it, I knew that silence carved a small, invisible hole in his chest. The days that followed were brutal. The house stayed unnaturally still. No slammed doors, no loud laughter, no tension humming beneath every conversation. Just absence. 3 days later, my mom called. I could hear it in her voice. She already knew something had happened. She didn't want to ask, but she couldn't not ask. I told her the truth. Not all of it, just enough. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said something I wasn't expecting. "Sue, you didn't have to kick the kids out too." I felt something hard settle in my chest. "I didn't," I said. "I kicked Avery out. She chose to take them. I didn't touch their things. I didn't raise my voice to them. I didn't punish them for what she did." There was a pause, then, carefully, "Have you talked to Mark?" "No," I said. "I don't want to." The next day, I took a half day off work and went to my first therapy session. Sitting across from a stranger and trying to explain why I felt like I was unraveling without sounding unhinged was harder than I expected. But the therapist didn't flinch. She listened. When I told her about Jesse quietly setting his fork down at dinner, about Avery's laugh, about the way my house had turned against me before I even realized why, she said something that stuck. "Betrayal hurts," she said, "but humiliation is what keeps it bleeding." That weekend, I started boxing up the things Avery left behind. Her shampoo in the guest bathroom, her kids' notebooks still spread across the dining table, a single sock in the laundry room that didn't belong to anyone in my family. I didn't throw them away. I couldn't. But I couldn't look at them either. So I put everything into one large plastic bin and shoved it into the garage. On Sunday afternoon, I was heading upstairs when I noticed the guest room door. It was open. I stopped cold. I knew I'd shut it. I remembered closing it firmly, like sealing off a wound. Slowly, I stepped inside. The bed was made. Not messily, neatly, hospital corners and all. Folded carefully on the pillow was Avery's beige cardigan, the designer one she never let her daughter borrow. It hadn't been there the day before. I was certain of it. Underneath it was a scrap of paper, 2 words written in her handwriting. "You'll regret this." My heart slammed against my ribs. I checked every door, every window. Nothing was broken. Nothing was forced. I don't know how she got in. I don't know when. That night, I locked every door and slept with a baseball bat beside my bed. I told no one, not my mom, not my therapist, not even my best friend Marlene, who had been begging me to burn the entire family tree down since the dinner fight. I tied the cardigan in a trash bag like it was radioactive and dropped it into a donation bin 25 minutes from my house, next to a rundown gas station. I know it sounds paranoid, but when someone who's already stolen your life leaves proof they can still reach you, something inside you fractures. I changed the garage code. I double-checked locks. I told Isla it was because of a raccoon. She didn't believe me, but she didn't ask. For a few days, it was quiet. I thought maybe it was over. Then the school called. Isa had gotten upset during recess. Another girl told her, "My aunt says your mom's crazy and your dad didn't leave. You made him." Isa told me this calmly, like she already knew it was meant to hurt. That night, I went back to the bin in the garage. That's when I found the envelope. My name was written on it in thick black marker. Inside were printed bank statements, cropped text messages, Venmo transactions circled in red, every detail laid out like evidence. Someone had been collecting pieces of my life. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. "You won't answer him? That's not fair." Another message followed. "There are consequences to everything, Sue." The timestamp showed she sent it minutes before I found the envelope. She knew. And that's when I understood. She had never really left. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at the kitchen table with the envelope spread open in front of me, The papers fanned out like exhibits in a trial I didn't know I was already on trial for. Every screenshot had been carefully cropped, every number circled in red. Without context, without explanation, it all told a very specific story. A story where I was unstable, a story where I was reckless with money, a story where someone needed to step in for the children. The worst part wasn't the effort, it was the patience. Avery hadn't done this in a panic. She'd done it slowly, quietly, over time. My phone buzzed again. Unknown number. You don't get to erase people just because you're emotional. I didn't reply. I took pictures of everything. Every page, every angle. Then I put the papers back exactly how I found them and slid the envelope into my work bag. The next morning, I drove to my parents' house. I didn't call ahead. My mom opened the door and froze when she saw my face. I didn't sit down. I didn't take my coat off. Do you know? I asked. She didn't pretend she didn't understand. My dad sighed. My mom looked away. Avery had told them I was overwhelmed, that I was struggling, that maybe someone needed to keep an eye on things for the kids. They said they didn't think it was serious, that they were just trying to help. I left without yelling, without crying. That scared them more than anything I could have said. On the drive home, Marlene called. I think your sister's trying to set you up, she said. And before you say I'm being dramatic, she sent me a TikTok about narcissistic siblings who hide behind victim masks. I pulled over. That's when I told her everything. Not pieces, not softened edges, everything. She didn't hesitate. Okay, she said calmly. Then we stopped protecting lies. That night, after Isla went to a sleepover and Jesse disappeared into his headphones, I sat at the kitchen table and wrote the truth. No dramatics, just facts. When Avery moved in, what she paid for, nothing. How she mocked my son, the money my parents sent her, the affair, the envelope. I attached photos, receipts, screenshots. Then I sent it to the extended family group chat. I turned off notifications and made dinner. The fallout was immediate. Apologies, shock, anger. An uncle admitted he had given Avery grocery money while she posted spa photos. A cousin shared an old barbecue picture, Avery's hand resting on Mark's leg, too familiar. I didn't say a word. I let it collapse on its own. 6 days passed with no word from Avery. That silence scared me more than her noise. Then the email came from Mark's account. Please don't tell Isla the full story. Let me still be her dad. I didn't reply. I forwarded it to Marlene. She texted back, bold of him to think he gets a vote. That weekend, Jesse came home with a note in his backpack. Avery's handwriting. An apology tangled with blame. Love wrapped around poison. I contacted the school immediately. She wasn't allowed near my kids. That night, I told them the truth. Not cruelly, just honestly. Isla cried. She said she wished I'd told her sooner. Jesse didn't speak. He took the note and threw it away. I filed for divorce the next morning. There was no dramatic speech, no confrontation, just paperwork and a strange sense of relief, like exhaling after holding my breath for years. The house stayed quiet after that. Not the hollow quiet from before, but a steadier one, the kind that lets you think. Jesse went back to therapy. Isla started sleeping through the night again. We took evening walks. We talked about small things, normal things. My mom tried to call. I didn't answer, not yet. Mark tried again once, then stopped. Avery never reached out. I don't know where she is now. I don't wonder as much as I thought I would. Some days still hurt. Some days I replay the dinner, the laugh, the fork hitting the plate. But I'm not haunted anymore. Everything I care about is under my roof now, and no one gets past the door unless they earn it.